So I started this channel 2.5 years ago, going on three actually, and it was I toured with Paul McCartney as his personal videographer on a tour of Japan and South America. And I had all this footage, and then now, almost 3 years ago, I decided, hey, put it on YouTube. People never saw this. Look around the channel, you can see a lot of that footage. But then, people saying, wait, tell us about, the circumstances. So I started podcasting, and I've been telling the stories. And, well, then the other day I couldn't really think of anything else. And came on Facebook to me, a picture of Paul McCartney. I'll show it to you, this picture, in a striped suit. And it brought back a memory, which I can't believe I forgot, because it's probably the most important memory of the whole tour. It was the first day of the tour, and I was working there with Paul. It was just him and a couple of Japanese journalists in a room. I started to feel very sick, and so finally, quietly, I just left the room in the middle of the job, snuck out. And then this was at the Tokyo Dome, and there was going to be a show that night. I found a little room, like above the arena or something there, and I just laid down on the floor, and I was violently ill. And like a girl came in and saw me who worked for the thing and said, hey, what's wrong with you? I said, I don't know, I'm sick. And I was passing out and stuff and vomiting into a wastebasket, a small trash can. And suddenly I look up out of a haze of nausea, and I see Paul McCartney standing in front of me, standing over me, because I was laying on the floor. And he's wearing that suit, that same striped suit that, you can see in this picture. He was wearing it in front of me that day. He's ready to go on stage. And he goes, hey, what's wrong with you, I said, I don't know. I feel really sick. I said, maybe I had some bad sushi last night. And Paul, he kind of wagged his finger at me and he said, veggie tour, got to get with the program. And he said, don't worry, we'll get you fixed up. I travel with the best doctors in Japan. We'll send him over. Which he did. So anyway, for months leading up to this tour, in New York, I had been having bouts of illness, like debilitating illness, that would last about 6 to 7 hours there. Just horrible, incapacitated. And then it would pass. And I was going to doctor after doctor in New York, and they ran all these tests on me and stuff. They couldn't figure out anything. And they'd ask me about my diet and, whatever. And finally it came down, do you have emotional problems or something? She says to me. I was like, no, only when this happens. And so when the tour came about, I was determined to take the tour, even though there was a fear, because it was I think a 3-month tour. This is going to happen during the tour. Happens on the fucking first day of the tour. And so anyway, 2 Japanese doctors came in. I'm still laying on the floor in that little room. And by the time the doctors arrived, Paul was on stage. And so, whatever, he's playing. And 2 Japanese doctors. The main doctor didn't speak English, and his assistant did. And after all these tests, after all these probes in New York, with all this equipment and all this analysis, they came up with nothing. This Japanese doctor, he lifted up my shirt. No instruments. He had no tools. Just with his fingers, he pressed into my abdomen. And then he said something to the assistant. I said, what did he say? He said appendicitis. I said, what? I said, no, it can't be. And no one had figured that out. But I denied it because I didn't want to get sent home. I wanted to stay on the whole tour, which I did. But anyway, Paul had said, they'll see you and then we'll send you home in my limousine, or one of our limousines, him and his family, back to the hotel, which they did. And I'm in Paul's limousine, so comfortable and nice there. And I vomited in the back of the limousine, which I felt really bad about, because, Paul McCartney's given me so much in my life, artistically. And, here's what I gave back. I was like, oh no. But anyway, I made it through the rest of the tour with only getting sick 2 more times. And then when I got back to New York, my appendix burst. And when that happens, you're kind of in trouble. And we weren't smart, we just took a taxi to the hospital. And I literally remember, I know what it feels like to be dying, because there was a lot of traffic and stuff. Taxis don't have sirens, they can't run red lights and stuff. So it was a very slow moving thing. And I felt my life ebbing away. But at least when I was in actual physical distress, I was helped out by a Beatle.